Africa. This continent has a vast range of cultures and situations. Ghana is a little country in West Africa, which is peaceful, actually. There are no raids, there are no tribal warfare. There's no tribal warfare. Hasn't been for years. A couple of skirmishes up north, but that's about all. I just thought I would mention that so you have a better picture of where I was. Kwaku was a Ghanaian from West Africa. He had grown up in the years of independence after the country was handed over to its indigenous citizens. Ghanaians are in charge of their country, proud, happy, and busy building its future. There was no nonsense about skin color in Ghana. One, everybody was work. With some few tribes, slightly lighter skinned near the coast because of their interaction with Europeans. Kwaku was entirely at ease with his color. I was at ease with his color and my own. So there was no nonsense about color in our home. In fact, very little discussion of it, despite the fact we had 4 children and lived in North America for 15 years. I want to tell you a little anecdote that illustrates this. My husband and I were reading in our bedroom in the early evening, and our eldest, my daughter, who was about 4, walked into the room. She took a look at me. She took a look at Kwaku. She took a look at me. She took a look at Kwaku, and she said, Daddy black, Mommy white. And she turned around and left the room. That was the only discussion we ever had about race in our home, because for us it was a non-issue. However, we also know that the differences between our 2 cultures were very big, and we actively promised each other to make our home and family life a blend of only the best of our respective cultural ways and values, and of our own feelings about life. Kwaku had never made a secret of the fact that after he finished his training in ophthalmology at the University of Toronto and later in Boston, he was going back to Ghana to live and contribute to the development of his country. With marriage, I knew I would be at his side in Ghana. We had settled that to our mutual satisfaction before the wedding, which is another long story. However, the timing of our move there would depend on his lengthy training at the University of Toronto and later at the Boston Eye and Ear, and on his success at earning enough money after his training to set up an ophthalmic practice and surgical center in Ghana. During the years we lived in North America, it had always been important to me that my children feel as comfortable with their racial identity, they were, of course, mixed race, as my husband was. I counted on his high esteem, self-esteem, his lack of concern over color differences, and his strong presence in our home to be enough to counterbalance racism in the society around us. In fact, our years together had passed calmly, both in Toronto and later in Brooklyn, a suburb of Boston. As a family, we suffered from no racial harassment in either country. All of us were doing well in a predominantly white, suburban American setting. Many years and 4 years children later, we were still living in Boston. Quaker Woods in Cambridge, across the Charles River, excuse me, and teaching at Harvard. However, we could no longer deny that the children were becoming more involved in American society outside the safety of our home and neighborhood. They were probably going to come face to face with racism in their teenage years in Boston. The truth is, we had waited long after we should have to move to Ghana. After much discussion and soul searching, we decided on an unexpected division of labor to make the move to Ghana possible. I took on the task of living in Ghana with the children, where I would enroll them in Ghana International School there, and where I hoped to teach. My husband would stay in Boston for 2 more years for financial reasons. It would take a hefty amount of capital to set up his practice and an ophthalmic surgical center in Ghana. Series 2, photo of our family on the day we left. I'm going to back up a bit. There we are. Now, I didn't manage to get a photo of just our family because you can see 2 little blonde boys and a girl beside my tall daughter. Their best friends had come and put themselves in the picture, which is rather cute. So in the far left is my son Joel, 12 years old. This is the day we went to the airport. Me in front in what I sort of thought was a safari outfit, but it turns out there's no safaris in Ghana. And in the middle, my son Harold, and to the extreme right, my 14-year-old daughter Kiara. So as you can see, the boys, except for, and then on my left, my youngest, Frederick. That's the only picture I have. We didn't have, phones and things to take pictures automatically. You had to carry, and with 15 pieces of luggage, I had enough in my hands to keep me busy. The most important task for me in Ghana was to create a home base for the children's, American and Canadian raised children, to adapt to their new environment. However, I had a second priority, my own special dream for my life in Ghana, one that had been inspired by an earlier visit to the country. I had been upset when I saw that many children there had few, if any, books at home, and too many public schools and libraries. Establishing a small children's library in Ghana became my personal dream. So I will talk today first of the surprise I had when I arrived at my children's school. And secondly, I will take you through the story of my efforts to bring books into the lives of more Ghanaians. We get to the airport. Picture me, a stressed, slightly stressed mother of 4 children waiting at the airport check-in counter. I worried not about the bigger logistics of such a family move to Africa, but by our luggage overage, which might cost us more than we could afford. The agent weighed and checked in the 10 suitcases allowed on our tickets, looked over the 5 carry-ons, and then I hefted an enormous duffel bag, my dad's World War II Army duffel bag, onto the scales, and explained it was filled with books for a children's library I was planning to set up in Ghana. Books are heavy. There would be an enormous charge. The agent looked at my 4 solemn, even forlorn, children behind me, checked the bag in, no extra charge. Must have been hundreds of dollars. It was either a miracle or an unusual example of corporate public works. God bless Swissair. A note. Upon settling in, when we arrived in Ghana, we took into our home one of my husband's nephews who had been orphaned, Moses. He was the same age as my youngest son. Now I had 5 children to raise on my own in Ghana. Series 3. The one before that. Oh, okay, one after that. Oh, I'll talk about this one first. My husband was, of course, upset at having to leave us to go on our own. So he actually arrived suddenly a week after we came. And this is his picture of us all, except my daughter who took the picture, about a week after we arrived in Ghana. And you can see me on the left, my handsome husband in the center, my son Joseph, who doesn't look very happy. But the little boys look happy. That's Frederick or Harold and our new child, Moses. Notice I all dressed them the same. That lasted about 3 years. After that, they refused. Okay. The other one is the next picture. Oh. Okay, Ghana International School. Just hang in there. I knew little about the school where I had enrolled my 5 children and where I was to teach. I was a little harassed as I entered the principal's office, the first day of school, and introduced the children. The principal was obviously busy on the first day of school and said to me rather sternly, "I'm sorry, but your younger son's classes are at a different site, down the road away, and across the street in the junior school. This is the senior school." She looked at her watch. "Good Lord," I said, also looking at my watch. "There's no time for me to take them there and be back before the bell." My voice rose in panic. "I'm going to be late, really late." "Just leave Kiara, Joe, and Harold with me and take Frederick and Moses down the road to the junior school. You'll be fine," she said. I was a little annoyed at her promise I would be fine. No, I would not be fine. I would be late, my first day on the job. Since my arrival in Ghana, I had heard the expression, "by all means, you'll be fine," spoken with seriousness, no hint of irony, a dozen times. It seemed every time I was experiencing something very unfine, I heard the same inappropriate words, often untrue, as both parties knew, and not a belief in a good outcome. There are often no good outcomes for many problems in daily life in Ghana, and no one knows that better than their owners. Nevertheless, without fail, if something bad is happening, they will be very reassured by all means you'll be fine. Anyway, it was my fault we were running late. The first day of school, I usually leave plenty of time. Back in Toronto, my father used to tease me about my husband's often tardy arriving at family groups. He would refer to Quaker as being on Ghana time. But I knew that the international school was run clock time, and I was worried I would be embarrassed being late my first day there. I hurried over to the entrance school, and I left my place in the principal's office. Yes, I left my little guys alone to experience the first day in school. As I departed, I turned to the little ones, and under the Ghanaian's expression, I professed to disdain. "By all means," I said, "you'll be fine." Cringing inwardly as I hurried away. Why was I cringing? Because this was Moses' first day at school. Straight from the village, he didn't speak a word of English. And this was a school with English for teaching and learning. By the way, English is one of the official languages of Ghana. So I arrived at the senior school. I haven't got very good pictures of the senior school, so the best I could do is the back of the girls section, but that's all right. The hall, the assembly hall, was a large concrete platform with a raised stage at one end. The stage had a back wall, and the rest of the building was open air, no walls at all. The students were lined up facing the stage. Through the heat exhaustion of my run to the senior school, I saw first only rows of green and white on one side and rows of black and white on the other. I soon sorted it out as rows of girls in green and white dresses. You can just catch a glimpse of the boys in dark trousers and white shirts. School uniforms. Rats. I'd known about uniforms, of course, but I bought green and white material for my daughter's uniforms. But I had not internalized the effect of everyone dressed the same. Uniforms make students look alike. I slowed down memorizing of all their names. But when my eyes swept a second time over the assembled children and teenagers, what is the next one? There's the boys' side. When my eyes swept a second time over the assembled children and teenagers of Ghana international schools, I saw past the uniforms to the young people themselves. I saw something I had wanted to see since my first child's first day of school in Boston. An incredible mix of ethnicities, skin colors, and facial features. My kids had just gone from being among the few brown faces in our suburban school in Massachusetts to being part of a community of children, a dozen shades of skin color, and a pleasing variety of features, which these bad pictures don't get, but you'll understand in a minute. There are no names for all the skin tones of the students at an international school. I saw many shades of darkness, from black through dark reddish brown, and all gradations of white. European and North American students differed from each other almost as much, with an array of pale, tanned, olive, and sun-red faces. Nobody was different, because everybody was different. My heart filled with joy. We were at exactly the right place, the right school for my family. There were students from all continents and over 100 countries over the years at Ghana International School. Every lovely shade of humanity was assembled here. Do you have the picture of the graduation? Yeah, that's one I know. So there is Moses is somewhere there. I can't find him, but he's there. Oh yeah, he's in the second row from the back. Yeah, looking very cute and very proud of his uniform. Ghanaians love uniforms. Everybody wears a uniform, but can possibly do so. So as I said, every lovely shade of humanity was assembled here. So I knew my children were off on a good start to be in this school, and it turned out some of them stayed 3 years, some stayed 6 years, and I stayed alone for 2. So in those years, Ghana International School, St. John's, and I talk about that in my memoir, which I just completed, by the way, was one of the major influences in their childhood and in their, you can see it in their adulthood. So the other influence of Ghana will have to come another day. On the children will come another day, but just as an example, as we see here, my youngest son has just finished a tour of South Africa. He flew it, yeah. And he's now in Ghana, prospecting for business opportunities. He, like the other 3 of my kids, are all involved some way or another in either good works. My son has himself founded a physical library, a huge library with computers in 3 places that's ongoing. And all of them have, my daughter visited frequently when she was working for nonprofits. They're all very much influenced by the school that we went to. My library project. I was worried when I arrived that my one large bag of books would not be enough to open even a small reading room. How was I going to expand it? How was I going to get books? I didn't know. First of all, I didn't know if our rented house would have a room to set up as a reading room, but it did. Secondly, I didn't have any money to ship books across the Atlantic Ocean. Thirdly, I was working full time. 4 kids to integrate into a new community and adopted African son. I told myself to be patient, start small, and hope. I was to be rewarded by my patience. My first bit of good luck was to find the room. I had some furniture built. Next. Oh no, this is the sign when we actually set up the reading room in our house. My youngest Frederick and my youngest Moses, I think they're both about 6 or 7, 7 maybe. You can't see the sign, but the boys are bigger than the sign, so I don't have a picture. I had another surprise. I received several boxes of books from, you don't need to switch it yet, okay? I had received several boxes of books from my stepmother in Toronto. Later, my friend Jan collected more books for me, all donated in England and shipped them to me. These unexpected miracles now meant I had a good, if modest, collection. We had even had a Canada corner, complete with a large Canadian flag, to honor the donors of the books, said my stepmother from Toronto. Series 5, Moses and Frederick with a sign. That's the one we have there. Series 5. The next one is the bookcases I have made locally, very cheaply made. And tables, nice tables, I love them. Then the boxes of books that arrived from my stepmother in Canada, and boxes of books from my neighbor Moses unpacking the next box of books. So all the work was done by me or the little kids. The books were excellent, colorful, and in good shape. The porch was transferred into a reading room called the children's room. We couldn't lend out books, but we kept the door open several days a week for anyone who came by. If I had ever had any doubts about getting books in the hands of the children of Ghana, this first modest little reading room proved that I had a good idea. Children from the surrounding bungalows flocked to our space and immersed themselves in reading. The older ones read and read. There's the Canada corner, but you can't see the books. But anyway, okay, next. The older ones immersed themselves in real reading. The younger ones looked at the pictures, turning the pages slowly, pretending to read. Children read in every corner of the space, sitting or lying on the floor, sometimes 2 in a chair, or 5 around a table, or all alone. That was our youngest. He was just about 4. Okay, next step. Yeah. I wanted to reach more children than those of the quiet residential area. So I offered to bring our books to several large government schools and change the library into a mobile library, which is rather a grandiose title. We actually took the books in my station wagon. I packed up a selection of storybooks and interesting resources, and we took them. You could show the picture of the schools. Ghana has a vast public school system. The school architecture is very standardized. Long strings of single rooms with windows on each side and roofed open exterior halls, a tropical design that fosters cross breezes and refinement. They are painted the exact color of the Ghana earth, with touches of cream, very much like the students' uniforms. So that's a big, see, they have drums actually instead of bells in front of them. So when the classes change, we'll beat the drums, which is a nice touch. The school uniforms. This, I think, was the design of these uniforms should really have been given a prize because they were so close to the color of the earth. And the families often lived one room without running water and had to keep those clean. They were inspected every day. And I like them a lot. But what you're looking at in those pictures is morning assembly. Everybody in all Ghanaian schools line up outside and have speeches, I guess. Then next one is our mobile library.
Is that the right picture?
There we are, yeah. So we took the is there one of the children picking the books? Maybe not, maybe at the end. You'll see it all. Anyway. We took boxes of books into the schools, usually, not usually at morning assembly time. I just wanted to see what it was like. And displayed them on shelves or benches. And the children picked a book and read. This picture is one of a very crowded, everybody wanted to read, so they just pushed everybody in and put the benches, their chairs close up. But I have another picture of them in a circular situation, which seemed a lot more reasonable. This must have been in the boys' school. We eventually set up these travel reading rooms in many schools. So it took a lot of, at closing time, I would leave my own school, international school, and take the books around. When we moved to a different section of Accra, I was sad to leave my children's rooms in my house, but I did not set up another room in our second home. Our new neighborhood was not as compact as the longest street. At that moment, or as luck would have it, or as one of my Ghanaian friends put it, I met with good fortune. The good fortune came in the form of a fellow Canadian from the city of Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada, whom I met at a dinner party. When he returned to Canada, he told his local Rotary Club about my library project and inspired them to help me out. And they did, in big time. They organized a collection of donated children's books, more than half a ship's container of books, thousands of books, including, there they are in British Columbia, packing the books, and you can see the thousands and hundreds. It must have taken them months to collect those from the people's giving their library, kids' libraries away as they outgrew them, I guess. Their coats and hats and warm clothes that contrast nicely to the pictures that come up next, which show the evergreen trees too are a nice touch. The next pictures are of the arrival of the books.
Wow.
We were absolutely amazed that we had received so many books. And so we quickly unloaded them, and the little boys helped. There they are, carrying the book boxes on their heads. That's my youngest son with them on his head, and he, in Ghana style. Anything heavy in Ghana is carried on people's heads, whether it's women or men. Okay, those are the drivers of the car, of the truck, but you can see the room is filling up. The next one is my youngest son, who climbed up to the top of the mountain of books. Okay. So the Rotary Club of Providence, British Columbia is to be congratulated, and we sort of sat around quite late as what the next step should be. I'm going to skip a little bit and go down to, I continued a bit with the after school reading rooms in across schools. And of course, I didn't touch the vast collection of books. I just sorted out a few. I had some help with students from Ghana International School sorting the books. So we had a club, a library club. And of course, our school was 40% Ghanaian, 30% long-term expats, and 30% short-term expats. That's why we had a mixture of nationalities. And this is my students' club. Some of the organizing some of the books for my mobile libraries. But I had a problem. I could not run the mobile libraries and do anything with all the books stacked in our house. I had become head of the English at the school. It was a big school, about 1,500 students, and later head of literature. The school was run on, it was a British school. It was an international school, but curriculum was British from the University of Cambridge. And so we eventually had old O-levels and A-levels, which was written in Ghana and sent to Cambridge to be graded. So I decided to donate the books. I began a distribution program, gifting about 500 books at a time to city and rural schools in Greater Accra to help them add to or start up their own libraries. I traveled far and wide in my station wagon, visiting schools and reading books. I got to know the back roads and the tiny villages, the small primary schools, all through the Accra plain. So there should be a picture of a truck. Yeah, no, that's the school. That's GIS school. Of course, we had all the amenities because the foreign students paid in dollars, which helped the fact that we could get vans. And so I had a school van. That was for the mobile. Okay, next. Some people sent a truck to get books. Once the word was out, I had dozens of requests. And I had trouble keeping up with the requests from people that wanted a load of books. But some people, especially in the small religious schools, seem to have enough money to have a truck. A regular public school, that one would not. And I have a few pictures of the schools that received a book. There is, this was an interesting one. This is the headmistress, as they call them, of a very tiny public school in a small oceanside village. She had no extra room. She just put the books in her office and later distributed them at reading time every day. They didn't have a single reading book in the school. Right. The next one is St. Joseph's Tech School, Secondary Tech School. This I have it labeled as 1992. The next one is a bigger one, Onema School. That's St. Joseph's. The first one was Onema, and then the final one should be West Africa. Yes. Notice it's all boys. West Africa Secondary School was all boys at the time. I don't know when it changed, but I looked it up on the web, and they are now 50-50 male, female. So that was how I got, not maybe half or a little bit more of the books distributed. Weekend after weekend, or even school days, I would start off leave the school early and start off because I wanted to get to the schools when somebody was there. Finally, I had a huge donation because of a Rotarian. Ghana has a Rotary Club, and they were so. One of my friends was a Rotary in Ghana, organized a donation of books to a village this time, not a school, in the mountains just north of Accra, Amanoklo. He contacted the chief of the area, and we were invited on the occasion of a big ceremony, annual ceremony of tribute to the ancestors. And we went to the ceremony. I could not find my pictures of that ceremony, but it was just delightful. The chief sat in state with his entourage and his speaker and the Ochami. The chief never speaks directly in these occasions. He always speaks through an Ochami, the speaker. And sitting in front of him, of course, everyone is in these glorious Ghanaian robes. Sitting in front of him was a little boy. And that was the soul. That was the symbol of Chief's soul. And I think he did a little dance during the ceremony. The reason that they were there was that on these annual visits, they call on the ancestors to be present to help them settle small quarrels in the area and disputes. They do that at my mother-in-law's village too, but that's another story. So I have pictures of the presentation to the chief. There we are. There's me with my glasses. The chief on my right in his, he's not wearing a typical Kenti robe like my husband wore. That's just got the Kenti, I think, sewn in stripes around it. It was pretty nice anyway. To my left is, I believe, the Queen Mother. Mm. The Queen Mother in Ghana is the only one who can depose a king. Not a king, a chief. They don't call them kings. So she is always present at official ceremony. There are some of the books, and there's my Ghanaian friend and Rotarian helping me present the books. Now that was one of the highlights. Although I love the little donations, but this is a way of getting rid of, well, more than 500 books. The title of the chief, there should be two pictures. Yeah, this is the second picture.
No, that's the first one.
Okay, there you see the umbrella there. The chief is always covered with an umbrella in royal ceremonies because he goes through the town and he goes out to the ancestors' trees. But I guess, it's a symbol of his authority. Okay, so that's the end of my story, of this story.
I want to hear more.
I
want to read your memoir.
Well, I'm just waiting for my last child. I ended my memoir. The memoir was all about me and how I coped with meeting, falling in love, and some adventures, and then going to Ghana the first time, getting married, having children, covered some of the things we did in a mixed cultural thing, going to Ghana, and this was my big project in Ghana, but I have also stories about, I presented one of the stories here. Was anybody here for it? It was about a pinworm in my adopted son. Anyway, it's in there. And then the book program, so there's a lot more. I would like to present my stories of teaching if anybody's interested sometime in the future. I don't think I have any pictures because there were no pictures in the classroom, so that's why I didn't talk about it. Any questions? Yeah.
Did you write your memoir for publication or for your family use?
Oh, that is a good question. I wish I had answered it.
Okay, so you're looking for
Just as I said, I'm waiting for my daughter to put a little biography at the end, which is the story of where they went with their Ghanaian Native American heritage. My last two kids are American. Um, to complement my story. And she's starting with it. But I finally told her to send me a resume of her career and I would write it for her. So that it's finished except for that. Of course, I do need to get a professional line editor and decide whether to publish 50 copies from my family or to try and get a publisher or self-publish. So,
Talk to Lori, she knows a little bit about that.
and yeah, any other questions?
How was it when you moved back to the States?
Well, the first, we went for the school year because my husband was still living in our home, trying to get the money together for his return to Ghana. And so we stayed the whole school year from September through June in Accra, Ghana. And then we came home for the 2 months of summer.
Every year?
Every year. Oh, yeah. And my husband flew out to see us, to be with us, sometimes twice, depending. And the first December I came back was a huge culture shock because in 1986, there were, it was a little bit of an economic downsurge in the economy of Ghana. And so imported things were hard to get. We had, shampoo, so any personal item was hard to get. And clothes were trying to get, we got all our clothes. So the first culture shock I had was I got off the plane. My husband came to me, home at home, we were all happy. I went to a big pharmacy and I walked up and down the aisles, hundreds of bottles of shampoo. But we didn't ever buy any in Ghana because you had to use your foreign exchange, and I wasn't paid in foreign exchange. I was paid in Ghana cedis. The other culture shock happened more about this third or fourth time summer when I came home. I couldn't get used to everybody being so gay. I mean, I kept being surprised when I went into a store or into a busy street in Boston that everybody was pale. And I realized that I had gotten very used to living in a country where everyone was another color. And of course, the friendliness and welcome of Ghanaian is legendary. When you meet someone or come to their house or go to their store, first thing they say is, Kwaba, Kwaba, Kwaba. You are welcome. You are welcome. And that's what I'm saying. What was the question again?
Yeah, I think you answered it.
Okay.
Transition, like, yeah.
When did you come back full time?
Oh, yes, I went for 6 years. I lived with my 5 through 4 when my first son went. My daughter went back to do her last year in high school, meeting for my husband. Then my son went back to do his last year in high school. He went back to do 2 years of high school. And then they just went off college. And so the 3 little boys and I that spent the last few years in our home in Ghana. Yeah.
Is your husband still living? I'm guessing not, but he'd be here with you.
Pardon me?
Is your husband still living?
No, he died, unfortunately. He died of it's sort of leukemia. It's not leukemia, but it's a different name, but it's a blood disorder in New York City. My son has a big house in New York City, brought him over, and so he spent his last year living with my son and being treated, and he died in a hospital in New York City. Unfortunately, towards many years into our marriage, 28 years into marriage, we divorced. And he went, at that time, he went back to Ghana. I had raised my kids in Ghana for 6 years by myself. And that, is the story, isn't it? Living in a new culture on your own without helping hand. But when he went back to Ghana after I stayed in America, of course, I taught at various colleges in Boston and then moved to New York City and taught at Manhattan, Borough Manhattan Community College. Yeah, I taught French and then I taught English in Ghana because I got tired of teaching French. So I taught literature. I taught English and literature in the British system are two different full courses. The students take English 5 years, literature for 5 years.
Were most of those schools religious-based schools? I saw a sign Jesus Saves.
Oh, that was a public school. Ghana is extremely religious.
That was a public school.
And most of the country, except the northern part, which is influenced by Islam, are extremely religious. They cannot conceive of a person who might be agnostic or atheist. So it was something I never raised because I had a delightful mother-in-law in the village. She couldn't speak a word of English. We loved each other. We communicated by sign language. But she would have been heartbroken if she had known that I was an agnostic. Fortunately and unfortunately, much of the colonization in Ghana was done by the big three Christian churches, Catholic, Episcopalian, and the Protestant churches.
Absolutely. My Aunt Ruth went to Africa,
Yeah,
French Cameroon, in about 1910. She spent her entire life there.
what
Lutheran.
Lutheran? Oh,
They were missionaries. And then my godmother went with her husband. She had all her children in the French Cameroon. But I've always been kind of horrified by it.
yeah. Well, no, it was they established the schools. You have to think that they established. My husband went to a school called Private College in a northern city called Kumasi, and let me tell you, it was an education. It would the first provost, not provost. What's the head person at the university called? President was Penelope O'Brien, who was, was a very famous Irish writer. They wore gowns. They lived in dorms. They had a good British education. Up to very recent, well, up to at the time, maybe the late 60s or 70s. When they came to universities in Canada, the United States, they got a year's credit for their Form 6.
Severe culture.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's another story. My husband didn't have a culture shock. He was so self-assured and independent that once when he went to school in a Episcopalian college, part of the university. One boy was trying to be smart and racist, terribly in the door in the dining room, and he started calling my husband boy. He didn't realize that that was an American term from slave days, and in Ghana it just means boy. So he went right over his head. He didn't find out so much later that he should have jumped up and punched him in the face or something. Well, he would have if he had been American. Yeah.
Well, thank you. This was
Thank you.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Really wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Penelope. Very instructive.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah. Personal story, personal journey. The River Reporter has a quote of the week, and I pick it and then do a little use a computer program to put it on a graphic and then write a little reflection. And this week's quote said, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." And that's John Kabat-Zinn. But the interesting thing in my little reflection, what I surmise, not being a surfer, is that I don't really know. I don't know the experience of being a surfer, but watching little surfer, movies and stuff. the surfer doesn't assume they're going to get to the beach, right? They might bail out of a wave. They might do a lot of things. But for us, being in the present moment, developing some skills and mission, you can maneuver through the ride. And I think it's so interesting, Penelope saying, I didn't know how this was going to happen. I didn't know how this was going to happen. I didn't know how this would unfold. And yet it did in this amazing personal journey. So I invite you all into your own personal journey. And we're so happy, Penelope, that you shared yours with us
Yeah,
today.
thank you so much.
Steve, you want to come up and blow out the candle?
We didn't take the offering.
Well, we did the offering, yes, I forgot that.
You know what, did we, the offering, yeah, we never did that, right?
No, we didn't.
All right, so we'll do the offering and the closing song at the same time, or the offering song at the same time. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirring of compassion, flow in love with life in the sea, move in the hand, giving life shade of justice, roots hold me close, set me free, spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Blow out the candle. We extinguish this flame, but we flame the spirit of our personal journeys in our days and weeks ahead until we meet again.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, guys.
Beautiful. Penelope, you are such a blessing. Thank you for sharing.